Welcome to Frequently Speaking, where we break down the vibrations of what we speak outwardly and how that creates what we frequently see. In today's episode, we're going to delve into embodiment, taking words into our body as for what it is meant for us.
So today, we're going to talk about embodiment, and not just necessarily how we embody all these great and fantastical things that we are as humans, but the way that we take experiences, take collisions with people, things that we say and things that happen to us, and embody them as a human that is being.
What does it necessarily mean to embody something? When you say that, oh, this person embodies greatness, they embody pure joy and pure happiness, or they embody hate, whatever it is that we are saying that we are embodying, we're saying that this person is in this state of being. They are this way, like they are the epitome of it. But what we don't necessarily realize is that when you break down the word embodiment, I know it's not spelled exactly the same, but it's just a play on words. We are actually taking these happenings, these experiences, these states,
and bringing it into our physical apparatus, which is our body.
Now, before we go forward, we're going to lay down a guide just for a few things that we can kind of get a general standpoint on. So, first thing is going to be universal forces. Now, this may sound a little spacey, a little crazy, but that's why y'all here. That's why y'all listening to Frequently Speaking, because this is how it's going to go. Now, it's pretty apparent that there are some universal forces that are acting upon us at all times. Every moment of every existence of every human being that has been on this planet are acted on by universal forces. And some of these forces are time, gravity, reality, the elements, and even electricity. Now, most of these universal forces are set in motion. They cannot be denied. There's the law of attraction, there's the law of detachment, there's all these different laws that work on us at a metaphysical level that cause these happenings. I'm going to write down a couple guidelines that we can have that we're going to refer back to as just universal forces, and we're going to use these colors to dictate them. Another thing that we experience as humans is attachment. And I say this not to say attachment, because we're going to focus on attachments later.
Attachments are the functions of these attachments and how they correspond to the components of us, whether it be of the mind, the body, or of the spirit, and how we interpret it to ourselves. So the last thing we're going to discuss is the difference between affect and affect. So affect is something that is happening outside of us. So it's like a cause and effect. If I smack somebody, they get hurt, oh my God. But what they feel inside, how that affected you, is completely different. It's a visceral reaction. It's something that happens internal. So just understanding those two differences is going to help shed a little bit of light as to what we're going to explain about embodying these happenings and these experiences.
So, given all of this, this is how we're going to construct a way and an understanding of how we can just open our perspective just a little bit more into understanding how we embody these happenings, these experiences, and all these things that may be affecting you or somebody else in your life. Our human experience is an effect of our conscious mind, our physical apparatus, and our ethereal spirit, all connected and bound together by universal forces. Now, this may look a little familiar. If this was our human experience, right? This is you moving at a totality, right? And if these two sides represented the split between our mental, which would be here, and our physical, down here, these are our two beings, right? Now we all know what this looks like. It's the yin and yang. It's the mix between us two. It's our positive, our negative, our masculine, our feminine, our light and our dark. All these different ways that we can explain this duality of our human existence. Now, the thing is, with our mental, this is more related to the light consciousness. So light consciousness meaning light matter, This is how we create. We create with our thought. We don't necessarily create with our body. We create different type of other physicalities and manipulate the physical realm. But where we create is that light matter. And that comes from all of this in here. So if all of this is your mental, we're gonna leave some space here for our ethereal, which is our little circle here, because everything in duality is within one another. Now, this other realm of our ether here, this is light and dark as well. So just as we have the, one side here and one side here split the duality, there's also duality here. So for the light matter that we have with our mental, that we use with our conscious mind, we also have dark matter, which is our body, our physical being, the vessel that we were here for, the female feminine womb that we are born into. And all we really are is just a little sperm cell that went into the womb and grew. And we grew the, our skeletal system to protect it, and that's just natural cadence, natural law, how it happens. But our physical body is of the feminine. It is female, it is dark matter, it is the balance to that masculine light matter that is cognitive. That is why the sperm cells reside in the man, and the womb, it resides in the female. There's a balance to everything. So just how this is the full embodiment of our perspective and our humanness, we have that masculine and feminine energy. Not necessarily saying that mental is only masculine and physical is only female. It's not that. It is just understanding that this is where it is derived from, and our ethereal, which is our spirit, is in both. So it is all happening at the same time. It is simultaneous. It is not anything split. It is not anything separate. And I think that is the big misconception when you have duality. People think that there is a separation. There is no separation here. You can see that the whole thing is connected. So when we have this ether that is that spirit in our physical, we have that spirit that is in our gut. That is our gut instinct. That is why a lot of females, they say, oh, my intuition is here. But your intuition is also up here. This is coming from a male aspect. It is of the conscious mind. You have your third eye. So there's a lot of different correlations that we can make with these simple distinctions that are just happening. And if we can stand back and observe it just from here,
and observe it for being all that it is simultaneously happening, this is where we gain understanding.
this is our gut feeling, right? You have intuition, you have that pit in your stomach, you're like, oh no, I shouldn't be doing that. That is the brain in your physical speaking to you. That is the spirit, your ether, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, whatever it means to you. That is that calling to you. Now, from your mental, when you have that same intuition, what you're thinking of is you're seeing that, and that is your third eye. So there's a lot of religions, there's a lot of spiritual practices that focus on the third eye, and it's about vision, it's about your intuition, how you see things in your creative mind to create your reality. And this is where it comes from. It comes from that place of connection, of electricity, of those universal realms and those things that we connect cognitively to with our brain waves. We can go a little bit further than that, but we're not going to go there. We're focusing on embodying and what it is meant to be to us. Now, when we take all of this as just a general outline, right? You have your gut intuition, you have your mental intuition, and you have everything happening at the same time, right? And all of this stuff is moving at a cadence. Everything, just like we know we're humans, everything is vibrating, right? So we're constantly moving. So as we are happening and we're perceiving this, this is wound up. But what is it all held together with? What are the forces that bind us together to make our existence happen? in that one split second when that sperm goes into the egg, there is a literal and physical, you can see this happen, spark as you come to life and as the womb is impregnated, and this is what happens. So when we're looking at that, we have to understand, what are these forces? What are these forces that are actually being acted upon us to hold our physical, to hold our mental, to hold this intuition and this gut feeling and all this ether together? Now, I'm just gonna name a couple of them because we're gonna stay focused and keep it pulled in. We're not gonna go too far off into space, you know? So a couple of our universal forces we can really think of are time. Time is a big one, right? Everybody knows time affects you. It ages us,
Keeps us on time, keeps us running at certain levels. You know, we see the sun, we see the moon,
we see how things affect, and we have a logical way of measuring it, right? There's also something else, gravity. Now, gravity is felt on so many different levels that sometimes we don't even pay attention to it. Most of the time we don't even pay attention to it. But there's a lot of times that we don't understand it as well. A lot of feelings, a lot of emotions are gravity. It's a gravitational force that pulls you to somebody, or it draws you to something. Or when somebody walks into a room, you can feel their presence, like it shifts, you know? And it's almost like the atmosphere is like flexing. But gravity is what binds us to the planet. It keeps us down. There's a lot of things that keep our body into motion in that way, you know, like our diaphragm wouldn't work properly, our circulation system wouldn't work properly if it wasn't for the right and specific amount of gravity that is happening and enacting on our body.
Another universal force is electricity. So electricity, we know that we are electromagnetic beings, and we understand that our brain works on synapses, our muscles work on synapses. It's all electricity. That's why we have a nervous system. Our nervous system is controlled by electricity, and it's a bioelectricity. Like I did that.
Now, electricity comes from the planet. We are electromagnetic beings. There's an electromagnetic field that is around the planet, that is out in the universe. These things, we can't see it, but we can measure it. We understand that, you know, you have an electrical stimulant and it happens, you know, like your muscles move, you have an e-stim, all these different things, you know, that we come into contact with static, you know, static electricity, even just being electrocuted by a wire, and we've transitioned that to use it as power. And this is the power of humans, that we manipulate these elemental and these universal forces, which is going to lead me to my next one, which is the elements of reality, which I like to call re-elements. So the re-elements are,
you know, the basic elements of the world. We have fire, earth, well, rock, water, and air. But one thing that we do miss are metals. Now, metals is not necessarily considered a base element of the planet, because it does form over time. It's just not naturally there. But this is something that we do have to come into manipulation with a lot of different things. This is how, you know, we are forged in
other different realms of how we can utilize our tools. And elements are necessarily tools, and we're going to understand this about these universal forces and how we can utilize or use them as these tools that work for us.
Now, the elements that we work with are based on reality, and this is why I made the conjunction with the two words of reality elements, because they only work in this reality. You can't take water out of this reality. It doesn't exist. You know, there's different things that doesn't exist in outside this reality, because they work based on these universal forces.
And it is a part of us. Our blood is the water, is what circulates us. Our rock, which is earth, which is what our body is made of and how we are grounded into it and how we are connected to nature in those ways, and those biochemical and bioelectro connections. fire is that internal fire that keeps us pushing, keeps us moving, our willpower, all these different things. And as well as air, which is our breath. You know, you can't survive without breathing. And there are also other importances of air.
It's helped life on this planet thrive. The birds, the bees, the insects, everything on this planet that has thrived with air and oxygen. This is how it's become a sustainable environment, and it's able to create this reality that we perceive now. If all these elements were not cohesive and in cadence with each other.
Now the last one I want to talk about, which is a very big one, which is
something that a lot of people have just been getting into and really kind of understanding, and Nikola Tesla was a huge founder of it, which is energy. Now the thing is, when we are talking about embodying it, energy is just way too vast because everything is energy. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on energy in motion. And the funny thing about energy in motion is if we just take energy and put it in motion,
we have emotion. Now, getting goosebumps just saying it. Emotion is something that makes us human. It is a part of us. It is deeply ingrained in us. It is programmed into us. And the thing is, just in our existence as a human that is being, we utilize emotion in such a way that it becomes artful. When somebody is dancing, you can feel this emotion because it is energy in motion. Somebody can just do a dance and it might not even look like anything, but if somebody's fluid with it and they're utilizing these universal forces in such a cadence, it can transition that energy and motion to evoke emotion inside of us. Because why? As humans that are being, we embody everything. So that energy that's in motion, that is outside of you, that is a cause and effect, it is affecting you because you are embodying it, you are allowing it, you are letting it into you. So this is a huge universal force that is acted upon us, which comes from the inside, and we exert it in so many different ways. And this is the most important thing that we're gonna kind of come around to when we're finaling up embodiment.
So, given all of this, we can see that just utilizing these universal forces here, this is what really binds us, you know? Some people are really driven by time, and this is how they utilize their reality to create their happiness. Is all they see. These are just tools. Again, these are just tools to control our happening. So if a person is of the elements, they're very in the flow, they're understanding that these elements of being outside and being connected to nature, these are all these things that they feel that when they embody, they feel at best cadence. Because as we are spinning and we're spinning, a lot of times some of these things don't resonate with us. Sometimes we don't have, certain electrical stimulus that affects our body. So we have a little dis-ease here with gravity. Or sometimes our emotions don't get settled, or we get riled up too much from our emotions, and it may throw us off on our trajectory. So this may give us a little dis-ease here.
Sometimes with, some people are just not on time. They're not really good with time, but that may give you a better spin on certain things, because maybe you feel you're always in a fight or flight thing. And I feel like even in this society that we're in now, time is a huge one, that it keeps us spinning, and this is the only thing that you're focused on. This is the only universal force that puts so much pressure on you that sometimes you forget about your physical, you forget about your mental, or you forget about this, those gut feelings, because you're spinning around so fast.
Your body can't drop into a cadence with all these other universal forces still acting on it. Because just because your mental or your physical is going on 100 by time doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of these things
are gonna stop. You're still having electromagnetic connectivity to your body. This is why people that rush so fast, you don't even know why you're on autopilot. And I know a lot of people have heard that so many times.
But you don't even understand the movements that you're doing throughout the day. You could be driving and, oh shit, I'm driving, you know? But where is that connection? Where is that mind-body connection? Where is that mind-spirit connection, you know? So just taking this into consideration, we're gonna break down a little bit of this, kind of ease out this, and just take this general idea and bring it into how we can see how our life is actually going in that motion.
So one last thing I want to point out about emotion is a lot of times what people, is love. Now, love is the highest frequency that you can think about. If you're running at the emotion of love, you are spinning at such a high cadence that your frequency is just outputting so much. It is a constant spin, and that is the only thing that you're in. Now,
the thing about these universal forces is that what binds us to another being are these universal forces, and that's how we create those attachments of which aspect. Are we connecting at a spiritual level? Are we connecting on a mental level? Or are we connecting on a physical level with that attachment? Because we're all connected through these universal forces. We're all connected through the mental, we're all connected through the physical, and through our ethereal. There's a connection there. It is not until we collide or we come near each other that we create that attachment.
And once we find one of these, and more likely it's going to be this emotion, that love, because everybody is connected through love. So when you feel that high frequency, you want to attach to it. You want to bring it into you because it resonates so much with you. And the thing is, this is what binds us to other beings, to other things, to other habits, is that frequency and that resonation between us and that thing that is outside of us.
We choose the state of love to remain in with other selves as we maintain attachments.
So, now that we've identified all these things and how they come into play with our physical apparatus, now we're going to take a look at how those things actually correlate with one another. So, we looked at it singly and independently as one person, as just if it's just us or if it's just an individual. But now we're going to look at what happens when those things collide or we become attached, and what actually happens. So the universal force we're going to use is time. I think everybody can relate to time and the effects of it and how it works. So most people think time is linear. We know that that can or cannot be true, no matter where your perspective comes from. So we'll leave that there. We're going to go with this universal force of time, right? So if we say that time is going in this direction, right? So we'll take both of our physical apparatus right here and right here, right? So if we take this and we say we're going in two different directions, right? This is you coming close to a person or you meeting a person. We'll just go with a romantic relationship. That works pretty much for everybody, right? So as you come close to this person, you guys are both subjected to time, right? This is your universal force. You guys are going in this direction. Now, as you guys start to get closer to one another, you start to experience all those different things. You know, the emotions come up, and all those universal forces that are going around us that, you know, we're all subjected to. We all have, you know, those universal forces of gravity, electricity, all those things. So you start to feel this cadence in between the two of you, right? And essentially, you're just two happenings and you're coming close together, and this is when you start to feel that and you start to go through those emotions. And now this is where we start to bring in these attachments. So we determine whether it's going to be mental, physical, or ethereal, right? So because we come into such close proximity and we're both going in this direction, because we come into such close proximity, you feel it, right? But what we don't realize is that sometimes our trajectory, right, it just might be a little into a different direction, right? This person might be going this way. This person might be going this way. And what it feels like is that time, given how it runs, we feel like coming close is, oh, this is us spending time, and then boom. Now, we're gonna talk about this point right here in just a minute, but this right here is where we get the point of awareness. Now this point is where we come into contact with this awareness. We have this awareness of this being that is next to us. We have this awareness of all these universal forces that are outside of us that are affecting us. So we ultimately, when it has the same frequency and it has that same wavelength, then we start to attach. And this is where we have that attachment on those wavelengths because they're of the same frequency. So if this person is spinning at the same frequency as this person, then this is where you make that attachment. Now sometimes let's go with physical, right? So we'll take physical, and you have a physical connection with this person, right? So this physical connection connects with this person right onto their physical, right? So now you have this same cadence. You guys are vibrating. Oh, it's great. You got, you giving it tens, all the goods, all that good stuff, right? You guys touch and you're physically attracted to this person. Then you start to make mental attractions, and maybe your ethereal and your spirit isn't quite settling there, but everything else outweighs that because you are already attached, right? Now, what we don't realize is that when we get to this point here, this point is when we have an identification. Now, when we identify what this connection or this cadence or this relationship is, because it's all relations, it's how we relate. This is a turning point where we decide, okay, I understand your trajectory is going this way, and I understand your trajectory is going this way, and this is where we start to tie in what is called a detachment. Now, if we break down the word detach, right? We look at this, right? Detach. So now detachment comes with attaching yourself to somebody. It's a connection. You're attaching yourself that is meant for you. So you're accepting it. Now D is either the, or for my Latinos, you know that de means of. Now,
of attachment is that you are making this of something. This is the something, the connection. But the difference is that connection. We are always connected in this way.
But that means that there is a decision that's made here, because you come to that point of identifying why this person is in my life, why we are resonating at this certain level, but not at other levels. And it's up to us whether if we want to get to that point and change course. But what happens is something very significant and that goes forward in that frequency that changes. Now we're going to talk about that later. But what we want to focus on right now is this attachment. So when we have this physical attachment with another person, right?
You start to gain this frequency, right? And as that time goes on, and boom, you hit this point, right? Now the same person, they're coming the same direction, right? Now, as that frequency meshes with this person, boom. Now, this is where you get the wonderful magic that happens between your relationships, and you gain that attachment, right? Because what's happening is that this physical here, you guys are having ebbs and flows, and all these little points that hit, that connect, right? That connect with each other. In all these little different points in the time, those are those magical moments where you have a realization that, oh, this is just physical. Ooh, this is just mental.
Now these are the ebbs and flows of every relationship that you have with anybody. Anybody that you have an attachment with, this is that resonation with it. Even if you have an attachment and you're bringing it into you, you're accepting it into you, that is a choice, but there has to become this identification first. You have to identify it first before you can accept it into you and bring it in as an attachment.
So what happens is this frequency is so big because you guys have so much potential, but once you hit this point of identification where you start to bring in the trajectory and you start to notice, wow, this person isn't on the same cadence as I am. They're not going in the same direction. They're not, we aren't as aligned as we thought we were, right? Now, a lot of times this frequency can shorten this up and change the trajectory, and you guys can get closer. And this is when those people fine tune that yes, we're going to accept time as our universal force, and we're going to go forward through this time. Some people choose this universal force to be love, and we're going to focus in on that love, and you close this frequency up so that when you hit that point of identification, you guys both go in the same trajectory because you've chosen to change that angle
of that universal force to focus on that one universal force, whether it be the electricity that you guys have between you, the love that you have between you,
the connection that you have within the elements, whatever it may be. You guys choose on that, and that is where we have free will. Now, life gives us a choice all the time. I spoke about this in choice and decision. So once you get to this point of identification, what happens is when you don't change, so now what happens is when you get to this point of identification
and you don't change that trajectory, or you have that choice of detaching or remaining in that attachment. So now what starts to happen is that when we feel these effects in our physical apparatus and we take this into our body, because this is that physical connection, we focus on that one single universal force, and this is where we bring it in to our body, and we determine whether if it's meant for us, and this is how we identify it going forward. We choose to either embody that or keep it outside of us. And this is the big difference between detaching and intaching. So here, what we're really identifying is if it's either going to be in attachment or if it's going to be a detachment. And this is where we bring it into our body and remain it, or we release it and continue on our own trajectory. Now, the converse to that is that if we hit this point of identification and we miss it and we just keep going, which happens in a lot of relationships nowadays with people making this contact and not knowing when to identify it for what it is.
What starts to happen is that this frequency gets a little bit tighter because now you're pulling with this other person. And as you're pulling, you're going into this realm of being in a really tight-knit situation, because what happens is as you're still spinning, you're going this way, you're pulling further and further from that person. Here, you're getting closer and closer. So that frequency is elevated. But as we go out, once we hit that identification point,
it turns into this negative tension frequency, and it starts to take from the relationship, because now what's happening is that one person is going off in their general course, in their general direction. The other person is doing the same, but you still are holding on to this frequency, and it's getting tighter and tighter, and the tension's there, and the tension's there. Our physical apparatus starts to feel frustrated. And this is where we build tension. This is where we build stress. All these different things that fill up this space of a relationship, that if we would have chosen the detachment, it would have turned into something positive, and boom, you would have expanded into something so much greater, because you're releasing that attachment and understanding that there's a connection there. There is always a connection. We're always going to be resident of this person because we've had this experience. And that's what it's about. It's about this experience here, these little points that are forever embedded in your mind and embedded in your memories, and you hold on to those experiences and understanding that no matter which direction you go, you are still connected to this other happening, to this other self. So to sum it up, what we have here is we have a positive spin awareness. These two happenings are spinning at a force, right? And they're going in the same direction positively. So as they're spinning, they're creating these experiences, these happenings, this connection between the two. You're feeling the resonance. You're feeling the experiences, everything that happens when you spend time with this person, when you share love with this person, when you create that electricity between this person. These are the things that happen. It's like a positive spin. Now, when you hit this point of contact, you have a neutral contact identification here. Now, it's up to you what happens, what you do with it, and how you go forward. Now, if you continue in this direction, then you will continue without a negative attachment going forward. But once you continue forward and you remain fixed on this attachment, because you're bringing it into self, this is where you get that negative tension. And sometimes it can be one-sided. Sometimes one person does decide to detach, and that wavelength gets even worse. And this is when we start to experience an imbalance between relationships, where you feel like, your partner is a little bit more distant, or this person is giving mixed feelings, or whatever it may be, because you have already hit that point of that neutral identification, but we're not able or not in the state to let go of that, or notice the connection and appreciate the connection and stand back and observe it for what it is.
We're always set in our own trajectory in life, but it's up to us that when we come into collision with another being or another state, we adhere to these universal forces of whatever so which we choose. And this is where we begin a life of allowance, because we allow it into our body and we allow it to be meant for us. This is where we take the word embodiment and really figure out what it's meant to be.
Now, this doesn't only go for people in your life. This can go for food, for habits, hobbies, whatever it may be. This is where we start to experience shifts, dis-ease, disharmony, all these things that present and give a result to a negative frequency force within us. When we have a collision with whatever this other happening is, it is up to us, with the willpower that we have, that fire, that elemental, deep, ethereal push that we have, to hit this neutral identification point and say, I'm going to continue on this trajectory, or I'm going to let this collision take me off course and I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with the flow, whatever it may be. This either causes you in a positive spin to elevate, or continue to revelate, meaning going in the same circle, same direction, or continue that negative frequency. Now, when we look at the word affect, when we allow something to affect us, that means we are allowing it into us. It is a deep, visceral thing that is happening, and we are bringing this into us, whether it be physically, mentally, or etherally, we are bringing it into us. And this gives birth to attachment. So affect gives birth to attachment. And it is not until we identify that universal force where that attachment is made, and we decide to detach from it, or we decide to allow it and embody it within us. Because therein lies either the raising of your frequency or the lowering of that frequency once you hit this point and continue forward. Because as we know, we are vibrational beings. We are continuously in motion. We will never stop that until we cease to exist. Our physical apparatus will never stop moving. So we are continuously moving, we are continuously growing, but it's that willpower in us to identify these attachments and do not allow them, unless they are beneficial to us, to make them attachments or to affect us. Everything is a cause and effect in this universe. Everything is a cause and effect that is happening around you, but it is up to you and it is up to us to choose to elevate in that frequency and maintain these detachments with these things that bring us negative tension frequencies. Consciously choose your collision course and allow the natural effects to affect your in-body experience without determining your destination of where you're meant to be. We are all atoms happening in the space of this existence. Our physical apparatus is just built to translate and elevate the frequencies that we create outwardly. Utilize the universal force tools to create your frequency and how you project this reality into all that is. So in creating the reality that you perceive, create with elevated frequency and embody what you frequently speak.